Greetings. I'm here sometime in the 14th century, actually in Victorville, California, for a holiday, and I thought I was going to check the energies here, continue with my tarot series, comparing the Wildwood Tarot, and the book here, the Wildwood Tarot, with the Rider-Waite that I'm really familiar with. So I'm going along this little exercise, if you're just joining me for the first time, going along the exercise with others who are either trying to learn a new deck or are trying to familiarize themselves with a deck for the first time by doing simple 3-card draws, and really just like living with the energy. Now, of course, I remember that I said that since I have the Rider-Waite system so firmly planted in my brain, that I'm really comparing the two decks, trying to see what the difference is, what the point of difference might be in the focus of the energy, rather than just trying to learn a whole new series, a system. That's going to be too difficult for me. So this isn't particularly a reading. I'm just going to go and tell you a little bit about what I'm seeing in the cards. So I went ahead and I pulled 3 cards today, and I will show you the cards, and then I will show you the companion card to it from the Rider-Waite deck, and this is from the Universal Waite Tarot deck. Okay, so here's the first card from the Wildwood Tarot. It is the 7 of Arrows, and it is labeled Insecurity. I hope you can see, because the lighting is very bright behind me, but I thought you might like to enjoy the scenery behind me, which is so beautiful. This is my from the front porch of my pavilion is where we're filming from here. As you can see, this poor woman is run through with 7 arrows, and she is just has her eyes closed and her hand to her breast, seemingly taking all of the arrows without attempting to run away, which I found very interesting, because in the Rider-Waite deck, these arrows, remember, the arrows are not represented in the deck, but rather swords, which is the image used for the element air. And in the 7 of Swords in a Rider-Waite deck, you might be familiar with this image, we have this young man who seems to be running away, perhaps, from, we see the tents beside. We think it might be a military encampment of some kind. It could be circus tents, I don't know what it is, but I think it's a military encampment, because if you can, I don't know if you can see, but down in the corner here is another camp of people, which he doesn't even seem to notice. He's looking over his shoulder at what he is escaping from as he's taking those swords he's carrying away, and he has an expression on his face like he's really gotten away with something. But has he really? Because the men over here in this camp can see him very clearly. So we're not exactly sure if he has really gotten away with it or not. He's also, my first impression right away, the one commonality between the 2 cards is, notice he's looking over one shoulder, his eyes really not even very widely opened, so he's really not getting a good view of where he's going. And the lady here, the woman in the 7 of Arrows from the Wildwood Tarot, also has her eyes closed. She's very resigned to accepting the infliction of all 7 of those arrows. She's not trying to run away at all. Her feet are very firmly planted on the stone. So we have the impression, perhaps in this card, that these arrows are inflicted by herself. Perhaps this is feelings of some kind of, she's punishing herself in some way, perhaps with carrying guilt around with her, or some kind of insecurities that she keeps playing over in her head. While this guy is a little more cocky pants, you might say, thinking he's getting away with something. So both of these have a little bit of a problem with focusing on their current situation. They don't have a clear vision of what's going on in their situation. Okay? Whatever their fears are, whatever their feelings are, they're really not based in reality necessarily. It has to do with their perceptions only, and that's sort of an interesting play. Now remember, this time I'm not reading, I'm just giving you some impressions, because what I want you to do is the same kind of thing, is live with the energies, live with the images that you see in the card. If you're not familiar with the cards at all, Look in the little book, maybe get an idea of what the energies are, but don't make any decisions yet. Because remember, we have 3 cards we're looking at together. We must look at the 3 cards together, not necessarily just individual cards. I'm going to move to the second card. The second card that I picked was the Knight of Bows. And this corresponds with Wands in the Rider-Waite deck. And here it is called the Fox. So we look at the Fox as the focus and what qualities a fox might have. And a fox we know is very cunning and very sly. They're good hunters. They're usually up, and then you can tell in the picture that it looks like the early part of the day. So they're usually pretty soon out in the morning to do their hunting. The other thing we know about foxes is they're very playful and they're very curious. So perhaps their mind might change. They might be easily led in a different direction depending on what kind of situation they might see in front of them. Or they might be taken off after a squirrel in one direction and they might see something else over here and it might take their attention. Curiously, this corresponds, the Knight of Bows corresponds to the Knight of Wands in the Universal Waite and the Rider-Waite deck. And oh, we're all familiar with this person here on the horse. Very showy, very... Now remember, knights, we're talking about swords, so we're talking about ideas, and a knight is in action. A knight is ready to take some kind of action. Here the fox, the knight, which is the fox, is ready to get out and get hunting. And here this knight, this rider on this horse is ready, and you can see the horse is really ready to go. He's ready to run. Okay? But we also see that this rider on this horse is very well dressed. Very well adorned with the barding and the beautiful costume. And this is a cool picture, especially here where I'm in the 14th century. I see some people dressed like this right now if I look around me. And he took the time to get dressed, and he was really, before he took his adventure off, whatever he's going after, he's very much involved in what he looks like, his impressions, okay? And sometimes we say this card, we look at this card and we say, this part might be a really charming person. Might be somebody who tries to charm people to get what he wants. Or might try to, whatever he gets, he wants to achieve things, but it's very important for him to be the center of attention. Okay, so other people's perceptions are very important to him. Where the fox, not so much that it's perceptions, but the fox is very charmed by, his mind is easily changed. You can distract a fox quite easily, I believe, by baiting him and luring him in a different direction. Remember the fox hunts that they used to do with the dogs, the fox and the hounds. They used to try to confuse the fox in order to catch him. That's one of the ways they tried to catch him. It's by giving him other kind of stimulus, a lot of stimulus. So it led him in a direction of confusion rather than keeping him on the course that he was on in the first place. So there's a little bit of similarities between these two cards. On the very first impression, they don't really seem to read. That's why you really want to take your time and really study. What is the artist trying to tell us? What is the focus of their intent when they made the photo? Notice also in the Knights of Wands, the background, the terrain behind the man is so plain and so barren, really, that even the very land that he's in, he's just so colorful. And it kind of seems, he seems sort of out of place that he's so colorful. Okay. Also, I want to say, the fox, look at the fox's eyes. I'm very interested in a lot of these tarot, the illustrations. You want to look at the eyes. And what are his eyes doing in this photo? They're just little tiny slits. Little tiny slits. He's looking at a very narrow field of vision. Yeah, he's not looking at everything around him. He's looking at one thing, focusing on one thing at a time. Okay, so that's something that we might want to keep in consideration. Okay, the third and last card, this is kind of an unusual card in the Wildwood Tarot. This is the Five of Bows. It says empowerment, and the figure here on the hill is a fertility god of some kind of, I forget his name, but he's there on the hill. And we have the bows laying on the ground in front of him. And remember the bows corresponding, again, to the wands. So we have two wands in this reading and one swords or 1 arrows and 2 bows, which is kind of interesting too. But this 5 of bows is about empowering. What is he empowered to do? The 5 of wands in the Rider-Waite or the Universal Waite deck usually represents some kind of a competition or something. As you can see, these young boys, it looks like, are all engaging in some kind of, looks like some kind of a game or something. It might be a battle, but you notice that they're really not actually hitting each other. They're doing a lot of waving those wands around, but they're really not actually hitting each other with the wands. So we might think of it more as a competition rather than a battle, or we might think of it as an argument rather than a serious fight, because it's more boys' play than men's play. And nobody seems hurt. They all seem quite equal in their size. Their wands are all the same size, and everybody's quite equal. So we usually see, in this case, is a healthy, spirit of competition is quite healthy, but it talks about, in the Rider-Waite, usually preparing yourself to meet the challenges, preparing yourself, becoming skillful, and not being deflected by little things, okay? Keeping on track, those kind of things. Testing your skills is a really important training for getting to the big thing in the end. Okay, so that it's like practice makes perfect kind of a thing. If you never had any challenges, you would never have any success, apparently. That's the life lesson here in these cards. Now, what I find interesting in the 5 of bows, the 5 of bows, the challenges in the 5 of bows are more in about empowerment, self-empowerment, rather than challenges by competing with other people or putting yourself in challenging situations. This is the kind of accomplishing something by choice rather than destiny, rather than by chance. You don't just happen to win something by being really good at it, and practicing at it is not enough. In this card, you must wish it. You must ask for it. You must want it. It's about the drive that is inside you, that that drive of desire that is inside you. So that was kind of interesting. In my first look at the cards, I'm going to give it a little more thought, and I will be writing up a conclusion in my blog at the Bird and the Crone. But I do want to point out before we go, remember we're looking also at, I said we're going to be looking at, do we have major arcanas or minor arcanas? Okay. Okay, before I go, I want to say one more thing. We want to just not look at what we're saying, images we're seeing, what each individual card might you might read the energies, but we want to look at whether these are minor arcanas, major arcanas, are these big life choices, big life deals, or are they small, everyday kind of things? And we see these are all minor arcanas. We're talking about arrows and bows, or we're talking about swords and wands. Okay, so just small things really. Remembering the swords or the arrows having to do with ideas, that beginning of an idea, those thought kind of things. And here we see in our thought, when we're talking about the thought card, we're talking about an issue here with, do people know what I'm really up to? Do people know what I'm really doing, what I've really done, or have I gotten away with it? Was I able to fool people? And here was, who is my enemy here? Is it myself or is it others? Okay, so we see those two dynamics, which are two dynamics that work inside people all the time, right? Those are some of the motivations. And then when we're talking about wants, remember we're talking about, this is when things become passionate. When those ideas, those first ideas we get, we decide this is something I really want to do. I really want to do it. And how do we achieve what it is we want? We're going to make the first steps toward getting what we want. Are we prepared to get it? Are we taking the time to do our homework? What is our motivation for getting it? Are we just trying to get it so that others will notice it, or is this notice us, or is this something that we really want? Do I really want to catch the mouse, or do I want to go after that chipmunk that I just saw? Defining what it is you want. That's what we're talking about here. And then lastly, how do you really go about getting it? Do you go about getting it through practice, through skill, learning from each other? Or do you get it by wanting it? Do you get it by deciding, you know what, I'm going to have it? Okay? Another interesting kind of a comparison. And looking at the 3 cards together, I think I'm going to get a really cool, a really cool reading on these cards, on the energies for this week. So anyway, I hope that was helpful and not too confusing. And please tune into my Bird in the Crone blog in a few days. Once I get back from the 14th century, I'll be happy to write it up. I don't have the means to do that here, but and see what kind of conclusions I draw from the energies that I just read. And please, if this is helping you, please let me know, or please any experiences you might have in getting to know your own cards. I'd love to hear about it, so please leave me a comment. Anyway, thank you for watching. As always, I am Rebecca the Good Wife, and I wish you blessings.